This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of The Express. Gary Allen with you. I got a request a couple of days ago. Somebody sent me an email. I guess they got it from my website as to what is the theme song that I use for the show. And it's from my good friend Herb Alpert, Highway 101. That was a big song for him back in the day. And it's kind of a funky little friendly sound, and I really like it a lot. I want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight on The Express. Gary Allen with you on this Tuesday night. I didn't realize, but for those of you that are NBA fans like I am, the playoffs are only coming up in about 3 or 4 days. My Celtics are losing at the moment to the Washington Wizards, but they're the number 2 seed in the East. I know EW back in Mission Control is a big San Antonio Spurs fan, and EW will let me know, I guess, whether or not – I don't know if they're in the playoffs or not. I can't imagine them not being. A special hello to Randy out there. Randy, thank you so much, and to all of you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us here on The Express. As I said, Gary Allen with you on this beautiful Tuesday evening here in the first part of April. My guest tonight, which I will talk about in just a few minutes, is Margie Shepard. But before we get to Margie and her wonderful story, and it impacts all of us in some way or another, and the stories that she has to tell, I know will help many of you out there that may be going through similar circumstances, or you may have already gone through them or will be going through them at some point or another, either yourself or a member of your family. But we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. I want to remind everybody that you can check out what you want to know about me on GaryAllenTalkShow.com. That's my website. There will also give you all the links to all the different podcasts that I'm involved in, as well as a little background on who I be. It also has my email address in there in case you wish to email me and ask me a question, as one of our listeners did just a couple of days ago. So that answers that about my theme music. You can go to youtube.com, Gary Allen The Express. That's ALAN. Thursday night, this program will repeat itself on our sister network, thanks to Renee, diversitybroadcastnetwork.com at 7 p.m. You can also go to voices.com, tune in. Go to tmvcafe.com, our website. And, the Spurs are in the playoffs. tmvcafe.com, and go to the radio tab, go to the archives, and you will there's little squares that show all the different shows on the network, and you can pick up everything you want there and then to find out any about our past shows. You want to listen to any of that, go to my archives. And by the way, folks, if you want to go into my YouTube, I would appreciate it if you could go in there and subscribe to it. I need a lot of subscribers. I'm not getting anything out of it. If you do, it just kind of helps me along a little bit, and I would appreciate that very much. And when I send things out on LinkedIn, as my guest did tonight and others, we appreciate it if you'd share that with other people. We work hard at these shows, and we really want to bring you the very best guests. And every time you help us along, we're able to bring along guests such as I have this evening. And getting to that, this young lady is a friend of mine through my good friend Bruce Marin. Bruce represents her as a motivational speaker, and you can always book her through Bruce Marin, CelebritySpeakers.com, which is his website, and you can check it out there. Margie Shepard has her own radio show in Las Vegas. It's on News Talk AM 720 KDWN, a radio station I'm familiar with when I lived out that way, on Saturday nights from 8 p.m. to 9 Pacific Coast time. And Margie is always celebrating life when she's on the air. She's celebrating life when she's not on the air. We have a running gag between the two of us, and I love her dearly. She's bringing the cookies, and I'm bringing the milk, and she brings the extra-filled Oreos. She's also a profound survivor, and I say profound because when you hear her story, you are going to say, my God, that's enough for one person in a lifetime, never mind all this other stuff that has happened to her. She's one of the most delightful people that I know. She's a survivor of so many different things. She's a delight. She's my Oreo cookie friend, Margie Shepard. Margie, welcome to the Express, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us.
Gary Allen, you are just the best. And yes, I brought the extra-filled Oreo cookies just for you.
Oh, boy.
I can't tell you, really. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction, and it is a pleasure to be here tonight.
It is a pleasure to always have you on. And of course, you and I and Bruce are very good friends. And Bruce Marin, I hope he's listening out there. I want to say a special Heidi ho to him. And I know he knows Heidi and he knows what she be. Anyway, hey, I've always used that expression, even when I was on the air. And then when I got to Las Vegas, I realized there was a talk show host out there who I'm not too crazy about. She's an ultra conservative, but she's also her name is Heidi, and but I said that on the air one day on my buddy's sports thing, and they heard about it, and I got in a little bit of trouble for it. But nevertheless, you have had probably one of the most interesting lives of anybody that I've ever known. I said to you the other day off the air that if I could put you and my mother in the same room, which would be impossible at this point because my mother is in heaven with the Lord, you would notice that your lives parallel in so many directions. First, you're both survivors of cancer. My mother, as we will get into with you, had numerous bouts with cancer. Eventually, it did take her life when she got up there in age. She smoked like crazy. I mean, she smoked like a chimney. That was her nickname, the chimney. And she came up the hard way. She was a women's libber long before that term was ever used in society. And she taught me an awful lot, which is kind of weird considering where I am at the moment. But she was a great influence in me. And when it comes to a hero, she was it. And anything I ever hope to become is because of her. So when I have a chance to meet someone such as yourself, I'm a great admirer of your tenacity, your courage, and your dedication to who you are and the direction you're going in and how you're helping other people. Let's start off with the fact that you grew up in the you didn't grow up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Well, you did kind of. You grew up in Sonoma, California, which is the San Francisco Bay Area. You were born, though, in a coal mining town in Castlegate, Utah. Now, I've been to Utah many times. What is Castlegate like?
Well, you don't even have the chance to blink. You're through it. During the time where my family was back there, it was very close to the Ute Indian Reservation. Desolate, the old coal mining towns, just like you'd see in the old West movies. And wearing, the hats and breathing in the coal dust, and it was the lack of nutrition and starving and so on. I mean, it's very much like a reliving of an old movie. There was nothing there. And of course, when you're in that environment, the process starts of, again, family so-called tradition. And being the oldest, no, there was no way that I was going to be going into a coal mine. But nonetheless, my mother and my grandparents did eventually move to Sonoma.
Yeah, there's another parallel. My mother, like me, was an adopted child, and my grandfather was a coal miner in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And so she grew up with that. And if you're from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, you know very well that's anthracite coal. And that would have been coal mines all closed down there, but that was it for a lot of people. And one of the first things that caught my eye about your bio when you were talking about it is that the people that you grew up with, they didn't support your dreams and your goals. Even though you moved to the Bay Area eventually, just out on the Oakland side, they didn't support your goals. And like my mother, they didn't support her goals. She wanted to be a doctor. Well, they encouraged her more to be a school teacher, which she hated, but she did go off to college. Why is it that a certain generation didn't support your goals and your dreams back then?
Well, you have to remember now, even though I am 70 years of age, and I'm probably one of the younger 70 years of age, that are out there, because age really is just a stumbling block in somebody's mind. So we're going to go back a lot of years. And from that particular era, if you did not follow family so-called tradition, no matter where you were in life, this was not a good thing. And if you were to branch out to excel, at least in the element of which I was living, up and above, or to have dreams that would surpass whatever your parents were doing and how they were living. You see, that was not considered to be a good thing. Though, on one hand, it is said, well, we want you to do this, we want you to have better than we have, but as soon as you begin to step out to achieve that, then there are other problems that can develop. And then, they can affect you from an emotional standpoint, as a young child. And then on the other side, during the same time, you can be from a very affluent background and born into a major conglomerate family. Well, the moment you're born, it's automatically determined you're going to take over the family business, or you're going to be a part of that. And if you decide you don't want to do that, again, it's the same formula. It just depends on where you are in life. It was to control. And the other element there, the other aspect is, many times those that were raising the children, whether they be a parent, a grandparent, they tried to live their dreams through their children or grandchildren coming up through the years. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah. And I experienced a great deal of that, but there was enough rebel in me that I wouldn't put up with that.
Yeah, I understand that very well. For a number of years, I lived back in Pennsylvania with the aunt and uncle that helped raise my mother, and also kind of raised me for a number of years. And as my siblings and I were scattered around relatives, and I didn't know what I wanted to be. Of course, I was a kid. I was a child. I left there when I was 8 or 9 years old, or 7 years old, actually, back in 1964. And they wanted me to be a minister. And I didn't know what I wanted to be. I think my biggest thing was be a Philadelphia Philly baseball player, which if you saw me ever play baseball, you know why I'm not a Philadelphia Philly baseball player.
Yes.
Jews we don't end up baseball players. We own the teams. But at this point, I can't even put a down payment on a baseball. But I understand what you're saying. And I think a lot of times parents back then were a little jealous of the possibilities that were available to their children that weren't available to them. Now, you would think that the situation would be just the opposite, that the better the opportunity for their children to succeed as generations came along after that, such as my mom and dad, they wanted all of us to succeed, whether you had money or not. If you were happy with what you were doing, then you've got it beat 9 times out of 10. So it's kind of interesting. When did you develop your self-reliance? We're going to get into the fact that at 16, things changed for you while you were still in high school. You graduated from high school, in 1965, I believe. And yes, when did your self-reliance? Because at the age of 16, you did something that sort of propelled your life in a different direction that has been going in that direction ever since. Where did this independence and self-reliance come from?
I sat back one day and really began to analyze the life that I had, where I wanted to go, and watch my mother, who, by the way, had not graduated from high school, the man that was actually my stepfather, 2 brothers that were going nowhere except to jail or in trouble, and that just wasn't going to be for me. Quite often, and it's a mindset with a lot of families, if your leaders, which are your parents, feel trapped in a relationship, raising a family, and children are draining them of funds or things that they want to buy or they want to go to, and they can't because they have responsibility. So attitude, I believe, sets in. And I felt, even at 16, I felt that would be the case, that if I wanted really to do anything, to have anything, I was going to have to get a job. So that's exactly what I did.
Well, it's funny, too, because that happened for you in July of 1963. And I was still living in Pennsylvania at the time, and I had a lot of things, too, going on in my life. Talk about what you did. You went at 16 years old, you caught a bus, you went downtown, and you got yourself a job in a department store at 16.
Yes, well, actually, it was the most elite women's clothing store on McDonald Avenue in downtown Richmond, California. And you see, my goals and my dreams at that time, I wanted to be an international model and to eventually, own my own couture line, my makeup, perfume, jewelry, and, and then teach that particular art to those that were aspiring to come up the ladder, like as I did. My dreams were always huge. And I realized that though I didn't know how to dress, much less put on lipstick, I had the darkest chestnut hair you ever wanted to see, and I really gave Shirley Temple a run for her money when it came to ringlets. I guarantee you it would be an oh my God, an OMG. But one day I put on my my tennis shoes and a pair of jeans and just a shirt, and I grabbed my purse and I walked down to the bus stop from my parents' home, got on the bus, and it took me to downtown Richmond. I had tracked down what the bus schedule would be, and I made sure that I got off within a block of the store. And the clothing store was very, very, very elite, posh. It really was the best around. Mm-hmm. But next door to it, they had, and it was connected to this store, a junior shop. And I made up my mind that I was going to go in there, and I had heard they'd had junior modeling shows and that they were looking for young girls for sales positions and whatnot. So I walked in just as big and bold as you please and walked right up to the woman who happened to be the store manager. And I just said, this is my name. My name was Margaret Guston, and I was looking for a job. And she just looked at me rather stunned. And she kind of stammered a little bit, and I turned and I looked, and some young girls had come through the door, mm-hmm. and they were over looking at some tops and some different items that happened to be on a rack. And I just dropped my purse right there at the counter where she was standing there, and I went right over, started talking to them. I mean, I don't know if they were above my age or just my age. I didn't care. They were there to shop, and I was there to get a job. So I ended up selling them tops and additional pants to match those tops, and walked them over to the counter and handed it to a very stunned, shocked store manager, and stood back while she rang them up. And after that, she looked at me and she said, "You're hired. Now, what's your school schedule? And by the way, how old are you?" And so, so that's how it started. And but that opened my eyes even bigger. I mean, I had eyes as big as cantaloupes and just as dark brown as you would ever want to see. And I met then the store owner, or one of the owners. It was a pair of brothers that owned it, David Wexler. And it turned out that, you see, the clothing stores, both the junior shop and the main store, they were union stores. Retail clerks and teamsters were the biggest, and if you were working, that's where you really wanted to be because of benefits. Mm-hmm. So at 16, and I had just turned 16 when I did this on July 29th. It was right after that I decided, boy, this is it. So in speaking with him, I found out that in order for me to become a member of the retail clerks, I had to be over 16 and work 30 hours a week. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, fine. Well, school started at 7:45 a.m. and I got out of school at 1:45 p.m. I tracked down the bus schedules, and I made sure that I was on a bus every day to go on down downtown Richmond and go to work and be on time. I worked better than 30 hours plus carried a full school load for the remainder of my days in high school, which was over 2 years, and then I stayed with them for another year. Within 6 months after starting with them, I more than qualified to become a member of Local 379 Retail Clerks. Now, that did not qualify me, though, for medical benefits because I was not emancipated from my parents. But mm-hmm. It did afford me job security. If somebody was going to terminate me, they'd really have a problem in doing so without justifiable reason. So that was a security point that I learned about at that time. Also, if I wanted to change my job, I could go to them and they would assist me to find another store or place of business that was a union store. And after I would turn of age, and at that time it would be 21, I would then qualify for medical benefits. However, it was never my intention to stay in that store because I had dreams. I was going to be an international model.
Yeah. We're talking to Margie Shepard, who has her own radio show on News Talk AM 720 KDWN in Las Vegas. She's on Saturday nights from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'm going to be on her show in just a couple of weeks. She's celebrating life. We're talking about her life starting out, and we're going to get into some of the more serious things that have happened to her in her life. And by the end of the hour, you'll understand this lady a little bit better and why I wanted to have her on. If you wish to book her as a motivational speaker, go to Bruce Marin, celebrityspeakers.com, and he'll be happy to talk to you about getting this young lady into your business and helping you get where you need to be, because that's her whole goal in life, is helping people to help themselves to get where they need to be. Margie, in 1965, as I said, you graduated from high school. But in 1966, you got married. Why at such a young age did you get married, if you had all this going for you?
Well, I, it was, though I took a lot of independence and I went and I got a job. And during that time, by the way, I'd like to add what I achieved when I got that job. I acquired my driver's license. I bought my own car. I was told that because I was then dressing better than my mother, that I had better keep that job because I was not going to have clothing or whatever supplied to me. So I really became rather independent. But again, support, finding out really how hard it was. And every avenue that I turned to, it just seemed like, well, okay, maybe this is the next step. But in being with somebody, I could begin to grow. And together, whatever level of business that we were able to put together, we could do it together and grow. So I did. I married. But things happen for a reason. That would not be the case. But from a medical standpoint, the news that I was informed after I married my husband was rather devastating.
Yes, from 1968 to 1971, you had 7 cancer surgeries.
That's right, I did. But just prior to that, it was just the beginning of when birth control pills first came out, and it turned out to be a fertilization pill, and there was just a blow up of pregnancies. I had been told I could never have any children, but ultimately I did, and that was a blessing. Though the marriage ended very quickly, I had a son. It was after that, within a year, I was diagnosed with cancer throughout my female, and that journey would begin of 7 major cancer surgeries. Radiation was just beginning. Chemo was still being speculated. My case was taken before Stanford, and their board determined how the surgeries should progress. My gynecologist and additional surgeon both went to Stanford, took my case. So it was a very difficult time, and for 3 years, I just didn't know really which way I was going to go. And the support level that I came from was not from a loving environment. It was not. So I learned, again, to be independent. Now, a real message here for the people as we go along and talk, please understand, at whatever the age, sooner or later, we have to realize you have to take 100% responsibility for your life. You cannot change circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself and your circumstances when given the right opportunity. You have to see that opportunity and seize it. And I did. How devastating was it for you? Because I know during my middle school years or junior high school through high school,
My mother went through, as you did, many cancer operations. As a matter of fact, she made a decision at one point, and I've discussed this on the show, as an interior designer. She was always in the islands doing hotels and homes, etc. She decorated Jackie Gleason's home 2 or 3 times. And she finally said, she came home one day and we all started crying as kids. She said, whether I die or not, I'm not doing any more chemotherapy. The doctors have all told me if I stop, I will die within 6 months. She said, I will live that 6 months out to its fullest. And if the Lord takes me, he takes me. She was a great woman of faith. And as I told you on the phone the other day, Margie, she outlived the doctors by 15 to 20 years. She lived to be in her late 70s before she passed on from cancer, but she outlived them. And she still had a number of cancer operations even after that. So how devastating was it for you without that support system around you? At least my mother had the family.
I was told that if the cancer did not kill me, the surgeries and complications probably would.
Dear God.
Because I had a very difficult time. And my level of tenacity kicks in. Whenever somebody pushes me or a situation puts me in a position where I have to make a decision, it's do or die, I guarantee you that is not where anybody or any situation really wants to put me, because sure as heck I will kick in and I will beat the odds. I decided to fight. There was just no way that this was going to happen. I was young, vibrant, I had dreams, and I was not going to roll over and become the poor me. During those times, they did not have the cancer drugs, procedures that they have now, where they can say after a period of time that you're cancer-free. And I mean a very little period of time for a multitude of different types of cancers. Maybe not all, but more than then, because then you had to wait 5 years after the last cancer procedure. And you had to be cancer-free before you would be declared well and without cancer.
Margie,
For
let me
5
ask
years.
let me ask you this. Was it like in my mother's case, it was in many different parts of her body, mostly in her abdomen. Were these things in different parts of your body and different types of cancers, or did it?
No, here, I think that this is really important, because we've had a lot of different people pass, people of real prominent names. Gilda Radner, for one. It started in my female uterine, and when they detected it, they immediately opened me up, and they found tumors that were attached to the ovaries and to the intestines. They removed the tumors. Of course, they did some other procedures in there and sent it all off, to be detected. But to answer your question, it was uterine cancer that was beginning to spread, and ultimately, through the various surgeries, the ovaries had to come out, tumors did regrow, more surgeries, and so on, and then ultimately ended up having a bowel obstruction at the end. But fortunately, after that bowel obstruction at the end, there has never been another reoccurrence anywhere in my body. And I will say that was, 5 years after that. I was approximately, about 23 years old, maybe going on, 5 years after that, maybe about 28, somewhere in that ballpark. But no, I beat it, and I had a little boy. And there were a lot of hard times, but I didn't give up. I didn't give up at all.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going through, as you know now, I'm going through a rough time. I'm going to see a doctor tomorrow about something, and hopefully things will pan out there. Let's fast forward now. It's 1977 to 1997, and a franchise owner for Nutrisystems came knocking on your door, heard about your motivational speaking and how you motivate sales personnel, and hired you on to take care of his franchise in the Kentucky area. Talk about how you got associated with that franchise owner, and talk about the success you had in Kentucky, as well as your expansion of creating over 25,000 new jobs in the Midwest area.
Well, as time went on, I did have to reassess and evaluate my overall dreams. And it occurred to me at that time because weight loss and appearance was beginning to take hold. People were interested, and there were a multitude of doctors that were actually starting various clinics. And I had actually started there first and built a name in the industry for building regions, quality customer care, overall results with staff members as well as clients and patients. From there, I was then addressed by a man by the name of Mr. Ken Keegan, who owned Keegan Management. Keegan Management was a franchise ownership company of Nutrisystem. Nutrisystem is the corporate office is located in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Ken
Yes.
Keegan, Ken Keegan's establishment was set up in San Jose. For several years, I worked in management for them, in teaching sales. I became then a troubleshooter wherever they sent me. The whole focus was to find out what the problem was and fix it, so that the clients were getting customer service, staffing was doing well as during that time, if you were a salesperson, they didn't have institutions there where you just fill out the paperwork, submit it, and then the companies are paid. So when you're selling an intangible, people have to understand that how to collect it, how to represent it, so that the customer is committed and the employee is making money. These people had to feed their kids, they had to pay rent. So I was a troubleshooter for a very long time in doing that in various locations. And then he started sending me to other areas out of the state of California. The final, I'll fast forward, and because it really is the closest to my heart. The final region that I was sent to was the expansion of the Midwest. And it was in Ohio and starting off in Kentucky. It would eventually add on 3 other states. At that time, it was considered to be a toad, and it was my job to turn it into a prince. During that time, I had the opportunity to work with so many different people that were eager to learn, that didn't know that they had talent, that they had abilities, they had leadership, that they could actually do something for other people besides themselves. So with that started the journey. I advanced a lady whose name is Lynn Robertson. It was Lynn Robertson at the time. It is now Lynn Johnson. She became the first executive that I advanced and became director of nursing, not only for the Ohio area, but I took her with me throughout the 5 states. She advanced the nursing area from all medical aspects. From there, I parlayed off and segued into placing other individuals in management, hands-on training, anywhere from still working with the staff members, knocking on school doors, opening up jobs with schools, as well as acquiring credits for their education. And then I addressed the law enforcement and opened up programs for law enforcement throughout Kentucky and Ohio, with a slip in their paycheck every week or whenever payday came for them and their family members to enjoy a healthier life and weight loss. It was a very successful program. From there, that did parlay into acknowledgement by 3 different governors while they were in office.
And you retired at the age of 58 years old, and you more or less thought, okay, after 20 years, it's time to go off and do something else. We're going to get to that too. We're talking to Margie Shepard, a good friend of mine. She's a radio talk show host, motivational speaker, as well as a motivator of people's lives. She's an entrepreneur. She has her own radio show on Saturday evenings from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific Coast time on News Talk AM 720 KWN. And you don't want to miss it. It's celebrating life. And believe me, after what this young lady's been through, she has a right to celebrate life. If you want to book her as a motivational speaker, you go to BruceMarinCelebritySpeakers.com. Tell him Jay Leno sent you, and tell him you'll give him a car. you at the time that you were doing all of this, unbeknownst to you, you also sort of created your own motivational speaking career through all of this.
Yes, I did, because you see, when I took this assignment, and as it began to grow and became successful, I started doing general sales meetings on a monthly basis. We had a small handful of people. Well, we only had just a small handful of people for staff. Hours needed to be expanded. Locations need to be closed. New ones need to be opened. Hours needed to be expanded so that it would be workable for people that worked, as well as on weekends and families and so on. But then it opened up jobs and positionings, part-time, full-time, three-quarter time, and so on. Mm-hmm. So on a monthly basis, there were contests for various different categories, and I would get up every month, and the room would fill up more and more and more, because we would have new employees. We were opening up positionings all the way down to the high school level as a part-time stock girl or boy, filling food bags. And like I said before, with the colleges, anywhere from junior college, city college, state college, university. In some cases, some were able to earn credits. I worked with counselors with all of these institutions. It was an amazing journey. Yes, it was extremely rewarding for me to see managers and in the medical as well as the sales and be honored by corporate, be honored by Keegan Management, because they didn't know or ever realize that they had talent, that they had the skill to lead, that they could instruct and impact lives in such a positive way that they too had a purpose in life. It was totally at a time of a major turning point. When people saw there were people still living in trees back there.
Hmm?
There were people still living in trees. I went to an office my second day there after taking a red eye to an area that I had never been. I went out to a location that was so far out, it was literally in trees. I went into the office. I had one appointment was scheduled on the books. Clothes were hanging on the wall for decoration. I look out the window, and here comes a lady walking down this dirt path. It was literally a dirt path with a hitching rail in front of the office. Literally, and I do not mean this in a negative way, but the lady looked like Haystack Calhoun, the wrestler, and on the other end of the rope was a cow and a calf.
I remember Haystack Calhoun.
I will never forget that as long as I live. But it turned out to be my 3:00 appointment that day. Now, one of the things in sales, you immediately do, because you want to accommodate, you want to know how to address that person. This individual did not have a purse. She was in a pair of very big overalls. She was a very, very, very big woman, wearing men's work boots. And she had the cow tied up out at the hitching rail. And the first thing she wanted to do was to barter the cow and the calf to lose weight. I took a lot of time with this lady, and I also learned too that coming from California, that's like fast moving pace as opposed to going back into Ohio. Also, in taking a look at her, I knew that this individual had a goal or a purpose, and I just had to find it. But the one thing that I targeted in on was she had a rawhide shoestring that a man uses in their laces for their boots around her neck that was dropped down inside of her shirt. That's all she had, besides her clothes, and she looked like Haystack Calhoun, and God bless her, she didn't have many teeth. She and I sat down, and it took me 3 hours. And ultimately, she shared that she and her man and her 3 boys lived in the trees. They had a tree
facility.
Well, you can call it a tree house. A lean-to. How about that?
Okay, I know that one.
And some kind of a little stove thing that they would light up for her to cook on. And she went all through how he was abusive and just all types of different things. I mean, we're talking about an emotional change from anything that I'd ever seen. But then again, I kind of drew on a lot of my experience about wanting to break out, wanting to do something with my life at the age of 16, and where there was a will, there was a way. And I reflected on that, and I was going to implement it to this woman, and I did. Mm-hmm. Her program was $800 at that time, which was a lot of money. We're talking 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that would.
And,
yeah.
And I asked her how she got her money. And when her man would be, shall we say, intoxicated and would fall asleep.
Yeah.
Over a period of time, she would raid his wallet. Now, that's a mentality in certain areas back there that I walked into. But in taking people like that wanted to lose weight and do something with her life, got her on the program, she became one of the best role models we ever had. Yes, I ended up moving that office, but she was still able to go where the other location was. Mm-hmm. Going from there to downtown Cincinnati, from there all the way to Frankfort, Kentucky, and into Louisville. I went as far as Louisville, and I have to tell you, it was some of the most wonderful, memorable moments of my life. Charming people, the cultures, the horses. It was an educational culture turnaround for me that I welcomed with open arms. Because you know why? I was one of them.
Yeah.
I was one of the people. I learned how to be relatable. Relatable is about communication. Mm-hmm. During a conversation, just be relatable, because during that conversation, it's going to be determined whether or not you're likable, whoever you're talking to is likable, and if you have anything in common. So don't go out there and try to please to be likable. Be relatable. Do it in your private life. Do it in business. I used that as a formula throughout those years.
We're talking to Margie Shepard, radio talk show host, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, bon, just a great lady. She has her own show on News Talk AM 720 KDWN Saturday evenings from 8 to 9 Pacific Coast time. Her show is entitled Margie Shepard, Celebrating Life. If you wish to book her as a motivational speaker, go online to Bruce Marin, MERRIN, celebrityspeakers.com. This is the Express with Gary Allen. Let's now, as I said, you retired at 58. And you thought, well, that was pretty much it. But you realized you got this motivational speaking thing going, and you're going along. You're doing very well with it. I'm sure that it had its ups and downs like anything else. But then in 2005, tragedy strikes one more time for you. And this is probably one of the most heinous things I've ever heard of in my life, next to my time in the military in Vietnam. Of what happened to you. At the age of 58, you went into Cedars-Sinai Hospital for surgery. Talk about that. And this is, fasten your seatbelts, folks. This is quite a story. And it's one that would devastate most people.
Well, what brought me to even going there was I had been experiencing some difficulty, some pain in my breast. Earlier on, yes, I had some breast surgery, and I had implants. And after 10 years, you should have them changed. But because I had saline, it was no big deal. And I had them to begin with because after I had my child that I was never supposed to have, I had lost all of my muscle tone there and tissue. So I went in and I had the implants done. Now, 20 years had passed, and I was having some difficulty, and I got scared. And I thought, uh-oh, perhaps an old nemesis was going to surface. So I sought out the head of a particular department there that also had a breast center. And I went, and arrangements were made, and he assured me, though, that it wasn't malignant, that what was wrong was that the implants that I had were old and the tissues were breaking through, and I just needed to have them replaced. There was another issue that needed to be addressed. No problem. It could all be done at one time. Bottom line here, going back for surgery, I made 3 trips down to have all the testing done to make sure everything was A-OK, copacetic. I had to make arrangements for a hotel room as well as a driver. At the location I was at, they had limo service. They were accustomed to going to that particular facility. I went in, and surgery was performed, and I had clear memory even after I first woke up, but in being taken to recovery. There was a nurse there that was giving me Demerol, and ultimately enough that I totally had no memory for about 4 days, including being taken into a Wells Fargo bank with a check made out for $19,000 that I was supposed to have signed, except that Wells Fargo determined it was not my signature, it was the nurse's signature. I'm just kind of skipping over the top of it because I really want people to understand a couple of things here. This has come, it's gone, and before any type of legal action was taken, which, by the way, was dropped, and I'll tell you why it was dropped. I did everything I could humanly possibly do, including discussing the legalities with an attorney. Bottom line here, what happened was Wells Fargo went ahead and took the check, cashed it, and put the money into the nurse's account. There was legal action set up, depositions were done. However, what I didn't know was, while I'm in the midst of doing this, I get a notification that my attorney is disbarred in Nevada by the State Supreme Court of Nevada, not once but twice, while he's working on my case. So he up and moves to San Diego, California. I am in the middle of a devastation here that I really don't understand why or how this individual could get me into a bank, and we do have pictures of that, and it was covered by NBC.
Yes, Brian Williams. Yeah, Brian Wilson, yes.
Williams, yes.
Wilson,
and,
yeah.
Yes, and the media was totally behind me. The woman was arrested. But here just goes to show you now, and skipping over, again, with the doctor, he happened to be the largest percentage owner of the Surge Center. And it used to be that a medical individual could not be in business with a layman. Well, there are laymans involved in terms of ownership regarding Cedars-Sinai, but also, too, by the time it got into the court system through the city, you know, your city attorney's office, it was going along fine. But then one went on vacation, another one didn't know that much about it, and there were 3 or 4 different attorneys, and the next thing you know, they go in to see the judge for the final thing, and nobody seems to know what's going on because the attorney that was supposed to be doing it left to go skiing the day before. In the meantime, my attorney, his license again, is chastised now by the state of California. No, the case was dropped, misrepresentation in my opinion, and I did not pursue anything further there. But the story would not end. I received a notification within a month. Wells Fargo, though the case was dropped, they put a lien on my house that would accrue 30% interest on a daily basis. I worked with them to find out why or how. Nobody at Wells Fargo would get back to me. The attorney wouldn't get back to me. So I was very, very, very diligent, and my level of tenacity kicked in one more time. It took 4 months, but the bottom line was this. I demanded to see the legal document that gave Wells Fargo the authority and right to come after me for $19,000 when, in fact, they had already taken the remainder of the $19,000, which was $16,000, out of the nurse's account. That was validated by the lien company. After that, they could not provide me with that document. I advised them in no uncertain terms, I believe you are skating on thin ice. Please ask them to produce the document or drop the lien now.
Mm-hmm.
They submitted the request to Wells Fargo. It was, I think it was the law that there was 10 actual working days it would take that they would give them in order for Wells Fargo to get back. They did speak with somebody at Wells Fargo also and said, no, she doesn't owe us $19,000. And no, there was no document. Wells Fargo, as we would all know later on, was also brought before the investigative commissionary for their shall we say, over creative, costing the people.
Let me ask you something, Margie. Let me ask you this. Let's go back just a couple of steps. The nurse was doing this on her own. The doctors had no idea what she was doing?
No. The doctor was not aware that she was doing this. He was notified once I realized something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
She did it on her own. But his position was she too was an independent employee. She was not on his regular payroll. She was somebody that was like an on-call. They have like a service. When you're dealing with places like Cedars-Sinai, they have it's like the contractor business. You can have somebody that comes in that's working for a major contractor, but they also have a license to do other things independently. It's very similar to that.
Yeah, it's for those of you who don't know, it's a huge facility in Los Angeles. It's right next to a place I used to work, the Beverly Center, and it is a huge facility. Every celebrity in the world, Michael Jackson passed away there, more or less, and Barry White passed away there. That's where celebrities go to get a lot of work done. Quickly,
well, let me just add this in there too,
sure.
Gary, because it really is important. Right at this time this was happening to me, a radiologist went rogue in the radiology department and was those that were being treated for cancer with radiation. There were many people that died because this radiologist went rogue. And right after that time, it was the Dennis Quaid, the actor Dennis Quaid and his wife and their twins. They were born. The twins nearly died because the nurse, the care was inappropriate. Settlement was done behind closed door, and both of those made national press and is a matter of legal record.
Now let's go back to the nurse real quick because I just want to. We got about 6 or 7 minutes left. What happened to her? I mean, did she pull this on other patients as well, but they never caught her, and what has happened to her since?
So it's my understanding it was suspected that she had done so. In terms of what has happened to her since, she it's my understanding she went ahead and continued nursing education, but during the investigation, she and her husband had a walk-around church fund, knocking on doors, asking for donations that were never claimed or really was a part of. So she was scamming in a lot of different ways, and it was discovered that she was doing that. After that, I walked away from it because I knew that there was something else out there for me, that it was. People have to understand this. You've got the right to interview your doctors, to ask the questions as to who's working for them. Are they an employee of them, or are they a part of something else on the side? When you're dealing with an attorney, you have the right to interview them and point blank ask them. It makes no difference what you agree to in terms of compensation. You are in partnership with them. Remember this. You've got one life. It's your dime. It's your time.
You have written a book. Yeah, you've written a book called Travesty, which hopefully will be published before too long, because this story and other parts of your life is just a wonderful story for people to say, hey, if Margie can go through this, and ladies and gentlemen, Margie, you're what, 5'8", 5'9" at the most in height?
No, I'm 5'5.5".
Oh, you're like my mom. You're a little tiny lady. Well, I mean, you're petite. You're petite. I guess that would be the proper term to use. If Margie can go through this, and believe me, her zest for life is unbelievable. We've been friends for a very short time, but she is a wonderful, wonderful lady. What's the one thing that you would like people to take away from what you've said? And please try to get this book of yours published. I'm surprised little Bruce can't help you get this thing published, because Travesty would be a dynamic book for people to understand and to get information from and to get encouragement from your life. So what do you pass on? What is it that you want people to know about themselves through what you've been through and what they can accomplish?
Okay, there's a couple of things I want to just run out there real quick, so let me do so, okay? First
Sure.
of all, you have to realize, for somebody, you have to step back and say to yourself, am I worth it? Am I worthy? And by the way, I have read a book, and I want to pass it on because it really will help anybody out there. There's a new author that has a book out there titled Worthy. She's a doctor. She's an internist. Her name is Judy Saul. So don't walk. Run to your phone and order it on Amazon. Thank you so much for writing that book. It helped to change my life in a very positive way more recently. Also, too, people have to understand that the best things in life are you, the people. You are the true jewels of your city, your state, the nation, and the world. And without you, there is nothing. What is going on out there is coming down in a multitude, a barrage of things, anywhere from the various hashtags to what we're finding out about our funds and who's in control and can take away. Bottom line, my friends, you hold the control. That's what I want you to know, and to begin celebrating your life. And hey, if you forget, and even if you remember, tune in to me on Saturday night, K-Dawn, from 8 to 9, and start celebrating life with me. I love you all. And Gary Allen, you are the best. You're the bomb.
Well, I don't know if I'm the bomb. I mean, if you were to speak to my ex-wife, she'd say I'm the bum, but that's another story.
No, I think you are the bomb. But really and truly, It doesn't matter who one used to be. What matters is who you have become. And every day we change. We can be, we don't have to figure life is over because devastation comes.
No.
Fight for what you want. You don't have to go for the moon. Go for merely across the street. Take a baby step. It's called building your confidence. That's all it is. Yeah. Reinstate your confidence. Go with your confidence. Try it. And you know what? If it doesn't work the first time, try it again. How bad do you want it?
Yeah, I have one of my favorite sayings in the whole world came from a gentleman named Johnny Unitas, and it is, if you take no the first time, you'll never get anything done in life. And
let me just tell you, the word no is simply non-existent. And by the way, regarding medical care, we do lack continuity in medical care. There are those that are good. They're just becoming farther and fewer between. What was many years ago, I believe that's why I am alive today besides my will to win. So you know what? Again, take charge of your life.
Oh, you are a delight. Are you going to be in Vegas this weekend for your show?
No, I am going to be on the road on my show, and we will have a very, very special guest, Mr. Brian Ruff. Yes, he's an author, and he has written a fabulous, fabulous book, The House Always Wins. So you know what? If you haven't got anything to do, come on, tune in to me.
And then I'm going to be on your show, I think, in a couple of weeks.
The following week. It's our turn. We're going to be together again.
Well, milk and cookies. Because the reason I'm saying, I don't know if Bruce is actually listening to the show or not, but you got to take a package of Oreo cookies sometimes when you go out to dinner with he and his wife and just say, order some milk and just have the milk and cookies. And if he doesn't get that, he ain't going to get it. I'm going to say that right now. He's a delight.
Oh, listen, you are a real treasure. And I just feel so honored. So honored.
Thank you.
To have been a guest on your show. You are an inspiration. I follow you. I listen to your podcast, and I want the listeners to know that we're going to be up here on podcast, and I really want you to go back and listen to the podcast, and I want you to tell your friends to listen to it, because you know what? We've got an important message here. It isn't about the woe is me because I had cancer. It's about the will to win at life. Do you want to exist or do you want to live? Do you want to celebrate or do you want to roll over and die? Frankly, I prefer to celebrate.
And I celebrate the fact that you've been on the show with us, and I thank you so much, Margie Shepard, taking the time out of your life to join us here on the Express. I will talk to you in just a little bit once we get off the air. But I thank you again, young lady, and God bless you. And again, I will give you a buzz in just a little bit. But I have to say goodnight to all our audience out there. Thank you for listening to The Express. This is Gary Allen. You can catch me at GaryAllenTalkShow.com. Gets ALAM. YouTube.com, Gary Allen The Express. Thursday night, this program repeats itself on DiversityBroadcastNetwork.com, ProgressiveVoices.com, TuneIn, TMV Cafe. Thank you so much. I'll be back with you next week. And please, until next week, take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.